Hello everyone, Jolene here from Bookworm Adventure Girl. Welcome back. And to those who are new, thanks for checking out my channel. As many of you already know, I have moved across the country and I still need to unpack my library. So that has made making YouTube videos quite interesting for a few reasons. One, we have to deal with the mess of boxes behind me. Two, I don't know where all of my books are. Some of the books, that authors and publishers have asked me to read are still in some of these boxes. Three, when I do find the boxes, it changes my entire reading plans and videos for the upcoming few weeks. So it's an interesting part. It's also the fun part. It's like greeting old friends that I haven't seen in a while when I do find the book, so it's a good thing. And of course, all of that is fine and good and part of life. What is exciting about today's video is that I will be talking about some of the books that I received before I moved, since I finally found that box. And I will talk about a couple of books that I picked up myself that I am so excited about reading. And I had to go out and buy them like right away because I was so excited. So I have 12 books to talk about today, and I think I am going to start with the books from Book Hug Press. The first book from Book Hug Press that I wanted to talk about is The Union of Synchronized Swimmers, and this is by Cristina Sandu. I was so excited to receive this, and my original plan was to read it during August because August is Women in Translation Month. Well, you know how that went in August. I did no reading, and this book was all packed away, so it didn't get read. But I do hope to read it within the next month or so. It's very short, only about 120 pages. Cristina Sandu is originally from Finland, and the book was first published in Finnish, and Cristina Sandu is also the translator. The story is about 6 girls who live in a stateless place behind the Iron Curtain. They practice every day in the river to synchronize swimming, and eventually all of their hard work pays off when they receive visas and they can go to the Olympics. Although the girls long for a different life, will what's on the other side of the river be enough? And will they return? So I've just thumbed through the book, and it looks like it's structured so that each girl tells her perspective, and I think it's going to be an interesting read. Next up from Book Hug Press is Because Venus Crossed an Alpine Violet on the Day That I Was Born by Mona Hovring, I'm guessing is how you say the name. Such a great title. This is translated from the Norwegian by Carrie Dixon and Rachel Rankin. And this story is about 2 sisters who were close growing up, but somewhere along the way have become distant. They reconnect in a hotel in a mountain village where Ella agrees to spend time with Martha, who has recently been discharged from a sanatorium. So when plans go awry, as they tend to do, Martha disappears in a rage, and Ella discovers a new sense of herself. The third novel from Book Hug Press is Letters to Amelia by Canadian author Lindsay Zier-Vogel. The protagonist in this story is Grace Porter. She's a 30-year-old library tech who is grieving after her partner leaves her. And Grace begins reading newly discovered letters that Amelia Earhart wrote to her lover, Jean Vidal. So as Grace reads these letters, she becomes captivated. And when Grace finds out that she's pregnant, she becomes even more intertwined with Amelia and begins writing her own letters to her. So in the blurb on the back, it says this: underscoring the power of reading and writing letters for self-discovery, Letters to Amelia is, above all, a story of the essential need for connection and our universal ability to find hope in the face of fear. So I think that I'm going to enjoy how this novel brings the story of Amelia Earhart into it. I like that kind of thing. So St. Martin's Press also asked me to read a few of their books, and I'm so behind on those. So these will be coming up in my TBRs soon as well. The first one, it may work out for the nonfiction November. It is Golden Boy, A Murder Among the Manhattan Elite. And this is by John Glatt. And here is what the pub sheet says. In Golden Boy, Glatt tells the true story of Thomas Gilbert Jr., the handsome and charming New York socialite accused of murdering his father, a Manhattan millionaire and hedge fund founder. By all accounts, Thomas Gilbert Jr. led a charmed life. The son of a wealthy financier, he grew up surrounded by a loving family and all the luxury an Upper East Side childhood could provide. With his striking good looks, he moved with ease through glittering social circles and followed in his father's footsteps to Princeton. But Tommy always felt different. The cracks in his facade began to show in warning signs of OCD, increasing paranoia, and most troubling and inexplicable hatred of his father. As his parents begged him to seek psychiatric help, Tommy pushed back by self-medicating with drugs and escalating violence. When a fire destroyed his former best friend's Hampton's home, Tommy was the prime suspect, but he was never charged. Just months later, he arrived at his parents' apartment, calmly asked his mother to leave, and shot his father point-blank in the head. With exclusive access to sources close to Tommy, including his own mother, Glatt, constructing the agonizing spiral of mental illness that led Thomas Gilbert Jr. to the ultimate unspeakable act. So I actually don't know anything about this story, so it sounds like it might be very compelling. The next book is another book that I might read for nonfiction November. It's a social history book called Maiden Voyages, Magnificent Ocean Liners and the Women Who Traveled and Worked Aboard Them. And this is by, I think it's Sean Evans, maybe? And again, I think I will learn a lot while reading this one. I don't know much, or really I don't know anything about the women who traveled the ocean liners. So here is what the write-up says for this. In an engaging and anecdotal social history, Evans explores how women's lives were transformed by the golden age of ocean liner travel between Europe and North America in the time period between the two world wars. During the early 20th century, transatlantic travel was the province of the great ocean liners. It was an extraordinary undertaking made by many women whose lives were changed forever by their journeys between the old world and the new. Some traveled for leisure, some for work, others to reinvent themselves or find new opportunities. They were celebrities, migrants and millionaires, refugees, aristocrats, and crew members, whose stories have mostly remained untold until now. Maiden Voyages is a fascinating portrait of these women as they crossed the Atlantic on ocean liners that were microcosm of contemporary society. From the luxurious upper decks for the rich to the cramped third-class travel in the steerage, the ocean liners were like floating Downton Abbeys. Next up, Simon & Schuster sent me an e-copy of Alice Hoffman's Book of Magic to review. Alice Hoffman is one of my favorite authors. I love her writing. Book of Magic is the fourth and I believe final novel in the Practical Magic series. So I've read the first of the series, which was Magic Lessons. I read that last year and enjoyed it. So I will have to read the rest of this series too. So if you are following this series, then you are already familiar with the Owens family. This novel begins in a library, the best place for a story to happen, when Aunt Jet Owens hears that the Death Watch beetle, and she knows that she only has 7 days to live. So Jet is not the only one in danger. There's a curse at work, and there is an attempt to save a young man's life, which spurs 3 generations of the Owens women and their long-lost brother to use their unusual gifts to break the curse. And they travel from Paris to London to the English countryside, where their ancestor Maria Owens, who we meet earlier on, first practiced the art that they all use. So the younger generation discovers the secrets that have been hidden from them in matters of both magic and love. This sounds like a classic Alice Hoffman novel to me, and I think I'll like it. I have another 3 books to talk about from ZG Stories. The first is a memoir by Canadian poet and writer Jane Munro, and it's called Open Every Window. This is from Douglas and McIntyre, and here's the write-up about this story. Open Every Window is a genre-bending prose account of the unraveling of a life, 2 lives, when Munro's husband, Bob, 20 years her senior, is diagnosed with Alzheimer's. This memoir charts a path through sorrow, the pain of seeing a partner age and approach death, the exhaustion of caretaking, and the regret in seeing life's scope narrow and diminish. Writing with courage and love, Munro grapples with what it means to care for her husband who is gradually but devastatingly deteriorating. Her identity as a writer, yoga practitioner, mother, and grandmother is eclipsed by a single word: caregiver. When a doctor admonishes, what job could be more important than caring for your husband? Munro wonders if the same question would be asked if the roles were reversed and her husband was asked to put aside all his own needs in order to care for a wife with dementia. Ultimately, Munro finds respite in the power of writing, yoga, and the rhythms of the moon, not to heal, but to allow her to face grief without breaking. A poignant affirmation for anyone who has experienced loss, Open Every Window reveals the pain and power inherent in loving and being loved. So this sounds like it might rip my heart out, so I'm going to have to read this novel when I feel that my heart can take it. Also sent to me from ZG Stories is a nonfiction and Indigenous studies book from University of Regina Press. And I think it's Gehl or Gehl, I'm going to go with Gehl, versus Canada, Challenging Sex Discrimination in the Indian Act by Lynn Gehl. And the write-up in this says the following. This is the story of Lynn Gehl's lifelong journey of survival against the nation-state's constant genocidal assault against her existence. While Canada set up its colonial powers, including the Supreme Court, House of Commons, Senate Chamber, and the residences of the Prime Minister and Governor-General, on her traditional Algonquin territory, usurping the riches and resources of the land, she was pushed to the margins, exiled to a life of poverty in Toronto's inner city. With only beads in her pocket, Gehl spent her entire life fighting back and now shares an insider analysis of Indian Act litigation, the narrow remedies the court imposes, and of obfuscating parliamentary discourse, as well as an important critique of the methodology of legal positivism. So this sounds to me like it will be an intense, maybe dense, and in-depth look at the politics around the Indian Act, and I hope that there is a large amount about Lynn's own personal story as well. So next in the pile is another memoir sent by ZG Stories, and this is from Highwater Press. And I hope that I'm saying this title correctly as well. It's called Spilexm, A Weaving of Recovery, Resilience, and Resurgence. And this is by Nicola I. Campbell. And the press release for this memoir says this. In this extraordinary memoir, best-selling author Nicola I. Campbell deftly weaves rich poetry and vivid prose into a story basket of memories, orating what it means to be an intergenerational survivor of Indian residential schools. Captivating and deeply moving, this exceptional memoir tells of one Indigenous woman's journey of overcoming adversity and colonial trauma to find strength and resilience through creative works and traditional perspectives of healing, transformation, and resurgence. As most of you already know, I think it's really important to learn about Indigenous peoples and learn their stories and learn from them. So this memoir and the previous book as well, I think will be good reading for that. And that leaves us with 3 books left on the pile. And these 3 are the ones that I purchased recently. First is Life in the City of Dirty Water, a memoir of healing, and this is by Clayton Thomas-Muller. And first, I absolutely love this cover. I'm not sure if you can see the details in it, but it's gorgeous. And I picked this book up for 3 reasons. One, I've heard some really good things about the novel, so that in itself is a good reason. 2, that I'm preparing for the Toronto International Festival of Authors, which is coming up in October. And Thomas-Muller is one of the authors that I want to learn more about. And number 3, as I said with the previous books, the stories of Indigenous people is important to me, and this is one of the stories that I wanted to learn about. So I will read the inside flap for you so that you know a little bit about this. It says, "There have been many Clayton Thomas-Mullers. The child who played with toy planes as an escape from domestic and sexual abuse, enduring the intergenerational trauma of Canada's residential school system. The angry youngster who defended himself with fists and sharp wit against racism and violence. The rebellious outsider who slipped in and out of juvie, operating in a world of violence and pain. The street-smart teenager who at 17 managed a drug house run by an Indigenous gang. But behind them all there was another Clayton, the one who remained immersed in Cree spirituality and who embraced the rituals and ways of thinking vital to his heritage. The one who reconnected with the land during summer visits to his great-grandparents' trapline in his home territory of Pukatawagan in northern Manitoba. It's this version of Clayton that ultimately triumphed, finding healing by directly facing the trauma that he shares with Indigenous peoples around the world. That meant turning anger into resistance and frustration into anger on behalf of what he was learning was the source of all wisdom, the land. Now a leading organizer and activist on the front lines of the environmental justice movement, Thomas-Muller brings his warrior spirit to the fight against the ongoing assault on Indigenous people's land by Big Oil. Tying together personal stories of survival that bring the realities of the First Nations of this land into sharp focus and lessons learned from a career as a frontline activist committed to addressing environmental injustice at a global scale, Thomas-Muller offers a narrative of healing and responsibility that shows that anger is a route that leads only part of the way to justice. These next 2 novels are both second novels from the authors, and their first novels I gave 5 stars to, so they both have set very high bars for themselves. So up first is The Strangers by Katerena Vermette. Again, another beautiful cover, and I won't talk a lot about this because I did talk about this novel when it was longlisted for the Gehl Prize. And this is a multi-generational story of a Métis family. And if you have read The Break, Vermette's first novel, then you may remember Phoenix from that novel. And Phoenix is also in this story as well. I don't think that it's a sequel, and I think it was on Goodreads that it calls it a companion novel. So I'm so excited to finally read more from this author. And the same thing could be said of this final book, Cracked Pots by Heather Tucker, is the sequel to The Clay Girl, which I absolutely loved. Heather Tucker's writing is so different than anyone else that I can think of. I have no comparisons. And I remember it taking me a little bit to get used to her writing, but once I did, it was like falling on a nice soft pillow and settling in to enjoy the ride. Cracked Pots continues the story of Ari Appleton, who I adored in The Clay Girl. And we already know that Ari has overcome so much in her life, and I think that her strong will and her strong spirit will be part of this story as well. So those are the 12 books that I have recently hauled that I hope to read very soon. Of course, I want to read all the books very soon, so it's very difficult, and we will see what gets read first. Please let me know if you have read any of these or if you are interested in any of the books on this pile. What are some of the books that you have recently picked up that you think maybe I need to know about? I'd love to hear about those. I am always happy to hear from you and to hear your thoughts. I look forward to chatting with you in the comments. Thanks again for watching. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day, and don't forget to make every day an adventure.